Have you ever kept a secret so big that telling the truth could change everything? Well, I kept one for 15 years, and it exploded at my son's wedding in the most dramatic way possible. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 55 years old, and I've been hiding something incredible from my family. But before I tell you what happened, let me start with the moment everything fell apart. I was standing at my son David's wedding reception, holding a crystal glass filled with expensive champagne. The bubbles tickled my nose as I watched David dance with his new bride under the sparkling chandeliers. The wedding was huge and incredibly expensive. It was held at the Mitchell family estate, a massive mansion that sat on 50 acres of perfectly cut grass and beautiful gardens in Connecticut. There were 200 people there, all dressed in their finest clothes. The women wore glittering jewelry, and the men wore fancy tuxedos. I had chosen my outfit very carefully that morning. A simple navy blue dress from a nice department store. Nothing too fancy. I paired it with my grandmother's pearl necklace, the only expensive thing I was wearing. I wanted to blend in, to be just another guest. I had learned long ago that the best way to keep secrets was to look exactly like what people expected to see. The reception hall was decorated like a fairy tale. There were ice sculptures shaped like swans, a 12-piece orchestra playing classical music, and enough flowers to fill an entire flower shop. Everything was white and gold and sparkled under the crystal chandeliers. I had found a quiet corner table where I could watch everything without being the center of attention. That's when I saw my new daughter-in-law, Samantha, walking toward me with her parents. Samantha was beautiful in that perfect, polished way that money can buy. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly, not a single strand out of place. Her wedding dress probably cost more than most people make in 6 months. She had a smile on her face, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mom and Dad," she said in a sweet voice that made my teeth hurt, "I want you to introduce you to David's mother." Her parents, Robert and Patricia Mitchell, looked at me with polite smiles, but I could see Patricia's eyes traveling up and down my simple dress, judging whether I was good enough to be part of their wealthy family. Then Samantha said the words that changed everything. "This is the family embarrassment we're stuck with now," she announced, loud enough for the people at nearby tables to hear. Her manicured hand barely touched my shoulder, like she was afraid she might catch something from me. The champagne flute slipped from my fingers. It felt like everything was moving in slow motion as the glass fell, hit the marble floor, and shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces. The sound of breaking glass cut through the music and conversation. Suddenly, it felt like all 200 guests turned to stare at me. The 55-year-old woman in the understated navy dress. The poor relative. The embarrassment. But then something unexpected happened. Robert Mitchell's face went completely white, like someone had drained all the blood from his body. His own champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. His eyes locked onto my face with an expression of shock and dawning recognition that made my stomach flip. "Margaret Thompson," he whispered, his voice shaking slightly. The music seemed to fade into the background. Patricia Mitchell's hand flew to her throat, and her diamond bracelet caught the light from the chandelier, sending sparkles across the white tablecloth. "Wait," Robert said, louder now. "Aren't you the woman from the Mitchell Holdings acquisition meeting 3 years ago? Aren't you that mysterious investor who bought my company?" Samantha's confident smile faltered. Confusion replaced her earlier smugness as she looked between her father and me, trying to understand what was happening. And just like that, after 15 years of being carefully invisible, I wasn't invisible anymore. My secret was about to explode. And everyone in that room was about to learn that the poor Embarrassment was actually one of the richest women in the entire state. How it all started. Tom's brilliant invention too. Understand how I ended up in this situation. I need to take you back to the beginning. Back to when my husband Tom was still alive, and we were just two regular engineers working for a tech company in Silicon Valley. It was 2010, and Tom and I had been married for 20 years. We met in college, both studying engineering. We fell in love over late-night study sessions and dreams of creating something that would change the world. Tom was brilliant, not in a flashy, show-off way, but in a quiet, thoughtful way. He would sit at his desk for hours, sketching designs and running calculations, completely absorbed in solving problems. Our son David was 17 years old then, getting ready to go to college. We lived in a modest house, drove reliable but ordinary cars, and saved money carefully for David's education. One evening, I came home from work to find Tom sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread everywhere. He had this look on his face, excitement mixed with disbelief. "Maggie," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I think I've figured it out. I think I've solved the battery efficiency problem." For months, Tom had been working on a piece of technology that could make smartphone batteries last much, much longer. At the time, everyone complained that their phone batteries died too quickly. Tom had been trying to create a power management system that would change that. "Show me," I said, sitting down beside him. He explained his invention to me, drawing diagrams and showing calculations. As an engineer myself, I could see that what he had created was something special. Really special. "Tom," I said slowly, "this could be worth a lot of money." He nodded. "I know. I'm going to file for a patent tomorrow." Over the next 2 years, everything changed. Tom got his patent approved in 2011. By 2012, major technology companies were calling us, wanting to buy his invention. The final offer came in on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it clearly because David had just graduated from college that weekend. He was 24 years old, fresh out of graduate school with his marketing degree, full of dreams about building his own career. Tom and I sat in our living room, looking at the contract. The number at the bottom made my head spin. $22 million. $22 million. For one invention. We sat in silence for a long time, just holding hands and trying to process what this meant. "We need to be smart about this," Tom said finally. "Really smart. What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking about David," he said. "He's just starting his career. If he knows we have this much money, it could change him. He might not work as hard. People might treat him differently. They might want to be his friend just because of our money." I understood immediately what Tom was worried about. We had worked hard our entire lives. We valued honesty, integrity, and the satisfaction of earning your own success. We wanted David to have those same values. So what do? I asked. Tom thought for a moment. "We tell him we got a substantial settlement from the patent. Enough to be comfortable, maybe retire early. But we don't tell him the real number. We let him build his own life, his own career, his own success." "For how long?" I asked. "For as long as it takes," Tom said. "Until we're sure he's established himself. Until his success is his own, not ours." That night, we told David about the patent sale. We said we'd gotten a good settlement, enough to pay off the house, help with his student loans, and retire comfortably. He was excited for us, but not overwhelmed. He probably assumed it was a few million at most. What David didn't know was that $22 million was just the beginning of a much bigger story. Tom and I didn't just sit on that money. We were engineers, and engineers solve problems. We treated building wealth like an engineering project. Methodical, careful, and strategic. First, we hired a financial advisor named James Harrison. James was smart, discreet, and understood that we wanted to keep our wealth private. "What are your goals?" James asked at our first meeting. We want to grow this money, Tom said. But we want to do it quietly. No flashy purchases, no attention, no one knowing our business. James nodded. That's actually wise. The wealthy who stay wealthy are usually the ones nobody knows about. We started with conservative investments, reliable blue-chip stocks and companies that had been around for decades. Companies that made products people would always need. Tom had a gift for understanding technology and business. He could look at a small startup company and see whether they had real potential or were just hype. Look at this company, he would say, showing me research about some unknown tech startup. They're solving a real problem. They have smart people and they're undervalued. Everyone else is ignoring them, but I think they're going to be huge. He was usually right. By 2015, 3 years after selling the patent, our 22 million had grown to 50 million. We owned pieces of companies that were starting to take off. We had invested in real estate in areas that were just beginning to develop. I remember one conversation we had in 2016. We were sitting on our back porch, drinking coffee and reviewing our investments. Maggie, Tom said quietly, we're worth over $100 million now. I nearly choked on my coffee. 100 million. 123 million, to be exact. We sat in silence, watching the sunset. It was surreal. We still lived in our modest house. We still drove our regular cars. David still had no idea. David thinks we're just comfortable retirees, I said. And that's how it should stay, Tom replied. Look at him. He's working hard, building his career, making his own way. He's proud of what he's accomplished. That's worth more than any amount of money. Tom was right. David had gotten a job at a respected marketing firm right out of graduate school. He worked 60-hour weeks, earned his promotions, and bought his first house through careful saving. He was proud of his success because it was truly his own. But we kept investing and learning. Tom studied companies and markets like he used to study engineering problems. We diversified our investments, technology, real estate, healthcare, renewable energy, and biotechnology. By 2018, we were worth over $200 million. Then, in 2019, Tom got sick. It started with headaches that wouldn't go away. Tom went to the doctor, and after many tests, they found a brain tumor. The doctors said they could treat it, but the cancer was aggressive. We had all the money in the world for the best doctors, the best hospitals, the best treatments. But sometimes money can't fix everything. Tom fought hard for 8 months. During that time, he taught me everything he knew about our investments. We spent hours going over every company, every property, every strategy. Maggie, you're smarter than you think, he said one day from his hospital bed. You can do this. You can keep building what we started. I don't want to do it without you, I said, holding his hand. You won't be without me, he said. I'll be in every good decision you make, every smart investment, every time you protect David's future. Tom died in February 2020. David was 32 years old, and losing his father broke his heart. At the funeral, David held my hand and said, "Mom, at least Dad left us comfortable. At least we don't have to worry about money." If only he knew that comfortable meant we were worth over $800 million by then. After Tom died, I threw myself into managing our investments. It helped me deal with the grief. Every successful investment felt like honoring Tom's memory. I started attending business meetings, always quietly, always in the background, always letting lawyers and advisors do the talking. I learned to be strategically invisible. By 2021, I was worth over $800 million and growing. And I was about to make a major business decision that would eventually explode in my face at David's wedding. In early 2021, My financial advisor James called me about an opportunity. "Margaret, there's a company called Mitchell Holdings that's in trouble," he said. "The owner overextended, borrowed too much money for expansion, and now can't pay it back. The company itself is sound. Good products, loyal customers, talented employees. But the management made bad financial decisions." "What are you suggesting?" I asked. "Buy it. The owner will have to sell at a discount because he's desperate. You could turn it around and make a significant profit." I researched Mitchell Holdings carefully. James was right. It was a fundamentally good company with bad financial management. The owner, Robert Mitchell, had gotten greedy, trying to grow too fast, buying competitor companies he couldn't afford. "Let's do it," I said. "But I want to stay anonymous. Set up a shell company. A business structure that hides my name. I don't want anyone knowing I'm the buyer." "Why the secrecy?" James asked. "Because that's how I've operated for 9 years, and I'm not stopping now." The acquisition took months. Lawyers negotiated back and forth. Robert Mitchell was desperate to sell, but trying to save face, pretending he was retiring by choice rather than necessity. Finally, we had a signing ceremony in a fancy law office. I attended, dressed in a simple navy blue dress, sitting quietly in the corner while my lawyers handled everything. Robert Mitchell barely looked at me. He probably assumed I was just someone's wife who came along for the formalities. He shook hands with my male lawyers, signed the papers, and walked away with $800 million, never knowing he'd just sold his company to a quiet woman in the corner. After the acquisition, I hired professional managers to fix the company. We paid off the debt, restructured operations, and focused on what the company did best. Within a year, Mitchell Holdings was profitable again, and growing. Robert Mitchell got to keep his dignity, got paid well, and even got a consulting position with the restructured company. He told people he'd sold to a corporate investment firm and retired comfortably. What he didn't know was that his comfortable retirement was completely dependent on decisions made by that quiet woman he'd ignored in the corner. And what I didn't know was that 3 years later, his daughter would marry my son, and my carefully constructed privacy would come crashing down. David started dating Samantha in late 2023, about 8 months before their wedding. The first time he brought her home to meet me, I was making dinner in my regular apartment kitchen. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs. David's favorite since he was a kid. Samantha walked in wearing designer clothes and carrying a handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her eyes swept over my modest apartment, taking in the ordinary furniture and simple decorations. "Mrs. Thompson, it's so nice to finally meet you," she said with a bright smile. "David has told me so much about you." We sat down for dinner, and Samantha asked polite questions about my life as a widow. But then she started asking stranger questions. "Do you find it difficult managing finances on your own as you get older?" she asked, picking at her spaghetti like she wasn't used to home-cooked food. "I manage fine," I said, because David and I were just talking about how important it is to help elderly parents with financial planning. Make sure all the bills are paid, investments are handled properly, that sort of thing. I was only 55, hardly elderly, and I certainly didn't need help managing my finances. But I smiled and said, "That's thoughtful, but I'm doing well." The second time I met Samantha was at a fancy restaurant. She insisted on paying, making a show of pulling out a platinum credit card. "Mrs. Thompson, have you thought about what you might do if you need assisted living someday?" she asked. "Those facilities can be quite expensive. David and I want to make sure you know we'd help if needed." It was all phrased like concern, but something about it felt off. She was assessing my financial situation, trying to figure out if I was going to be a burden on David's finances. If only she knew that I could buy the restaurant we were sitting in without checking my bank account. David was head over heels in love, though. He looked at Samantha like she hung the moon. When he told me they were getting engaged, he was so happy that I didn't say anything about my concerns. "Mum, I know she comes from money and I don't," David said. "But she loves me for me. She chose me even though I'm just a marketing manager, not some rich businessman." My heart hurt listening to him, because David truly believed he was just a regular guy with a regular job. He had no idea his mother could buy and sell Samantha's entire family fortune several times over. The wedding planning was all Samantha and her mother, Patricia. They chose the venue, the flowers, the food, and the dress. Everything was expensive and showy. "We want to give you two a wedding to remember," Patricia told David, in a tone that suggested they were being incredibly generous to my ordinary son. I bought my navy blue dress and grandmother's pearls and prepared to be a quiet guest at my own son's wedding. Just another skill I'd perfected over 15 years. Blending into the background, being underestimated, staying invisible. After the wedding ceremony, the reception was in full swing. The orchestra played elegant music while waiters, circulated with expensive champagne and fancy appetizers, found a quiet corner table and watched David dance with his new wife. He looked so happy. That's all a mother really wants, right? For her child to be happy. Then I saw Samantha break away from David and walk toward me with her parents. Her smile was the kind that looks beautiful from far away, but feels cold up close. "Mom, Dad," Samantha said, bringing Robert and Patricia to my table. "I want you to officially meet David's mother now that we're family." Robert Mitchell was tall and distinguished looking with grey hair. Patricia wore enough jewelry to light up the room. They both smiled polite smiles. "Margaret Thompson," Patricia said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "We're so pleased to welcome you to the family." Then Samantha said it. She turned slightly toward a group of her wealthy friends at the next table, just loud enough for them to hear, and said, "This is the family embarrassment we're stuck with now." Several of her friends laughed, not even trying to hide it. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers before I could stop it. The sound of it shattering on the marble floor was like a gunshot in my ears. Everyone nearby turned to look. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, assessing my simple dress, my modest jewelry, my ordinary appearance. And that's when Robert Mitchell's face changed completely. The champagne glass in his hand froze halfway to his lips. His eyes locked onto my face. I watched the color drain from his cheeks as recognition washed over him like a wave. "Margaret Thompson," he whispered, then louder. "Wait, aren't you? The woman from the acquisition meeting?" Patricia looked confused. "Robert, what are you talking about?" But Robert wasn't listening to his wife. He was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. "The Mitchell Holdings acquisition 3 years ago. You were there. You were sitting in the corner. So quiet I barely noticed you. But you were. The pieces were clicking together in his mind, and I could see the exact moment when he figured it out. "You bought my company," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't some corporate firm. It was you." Samantha's confident smile cracked. "Daddy, what are you talking about?" "That's ridiculous." That Patricia's eyes had gone sharp. She was smart enough to see that her husband wasn't confused. He was recognizing something real. Other guests were starting to pay attention now. Conversations were stopping. People turning to watch our table. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, looking directly at Robert. "I think you have me confused with someone else." But we both knew he didn't. The music continued playing. Waiters continued serving food. But in that corner of the reception, everything had changed. David appeared at my side. "Mom, is everything okay? What's going on?" I'm just tired, sweetheart, I said, standing up. It's been a long day. I think I'm going to head home. Are you sure? We haven't cut the cake yet. I'm sure. Congratulations again. I love you. I kissed his cheek and left the reception, feeling Robert Mitchell's confused stare burning into my back dot as I drove home in my regular sedan. I knew that my 15 years of carefully maintained privacy had just cracked wide open, and I had no idea how to fix it. The morning after, David demands answers. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Robert's recognition over and over in my mind. How much did he remember? How much would he tell Samantha? What would Samantha do with that information? My phone rang at 7 a.m. David's name flashed on the screen. Mom, we need to talk. I'm coming over right now. He arrived 30 minutes later, still in his clothes from the wedding, looking like he hadn't slept either. His hair was messy, and his eyes were red. What happened last night? He demanded before even sitting down. After you left, Robert Mitchell pulled me aside. He started asking weird questions about Dad's patents, about your investment activities, about our family's actual financial situation. I poured coffee with shaking hands. What did you tell him? I told him I had no idea what he was talking about. Because I don't, Mom. I don't know what he's talking about. David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he'd done since he was a frustrated child. But he seemed to think you were some kind of major investor. The coffee tasted bitter. David, sit down, please. I don't want to sit down. I want you to tell me what's going on. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text message from Samantha. Margaret, I think we should have lunch today. There are some things David and I would like to discuss with you. I showed David the message. What does she want to discuss? He asked. I had a pretty good idea. David, your wife is more observant than we've given her credit for. His phone rang. Samantha's name appeared on the screen. He answered, and I could hear her voice even from across the room, bright and artificially cheerful. David, honey, I was hoping we could all have lunch together today. There are some family things I'd love to discuss with your mother now that we're officially relatives. When he hung up, David looked at me with the same expression he'd worn as a teenager when he suspected I knew more about his broken curfew than I was letting on. Mom, he said slowly, is there something you need to tell me about our family's finances? I looked at my son, this good man I'd raised, who'd worked so hard to build his own success, and realized that 15 years of well-intentioned lies had finally caught up with me. Everything, I said. I need to tell you everything. We sat at my small kitchen table, the same table where Tom and I had made the decision 15 years ago to keep our wealth secret. Now I was about to unmake that decision. When Dad sold his patent in 2012, I began. We didn't just get a comfortable settlement. We got $22 million. David's coffee cup clattered against the saucer. $22 million. That was just the beginning, I continued. Your father was brilliant at investing. He had a gift for seeing opportunities before anyone else. By the time he died in 2020, we were worth over $800 million. The color drained from David's face. 800. Mum, that's almost $1 billion. I know. But you live in this regular apartment. You drive that old sedan. You shop at normal stores. His voice was rising. I've been working 60-hour weeks, saving every penny for my house down payment, worried about making rent payments. And you've had almost $1 billion this whole time. We wanted you to build your own success, I said. We didn't want money to change you or make you lazy or make people treat you differently. That wasn't your choice to make. David stood up, pacing the small kitchen. I'm 32 years old, Mum. I'm not a child. You didn't get to decide that for me. You're right. I said quietly. But David, look at who you've become. Look at what you've accomplished. You earned your position, your house, your reputation. It's all yours. If we told you, would you be the same person? He stopped pacing, his jaw clenched. I don't know. I guess we'll never find out, will we? The Mitchell Holdings acquisition, David said finally. That was you. I nodded. Robert's company was failing. I bought it, restructured it, and made it profitable again. I did it anonymously through shell companies and lawyers. And you never thought to mention that you'd bought your future daughter-in-law's family business. I didn't know she was going to be your daughter-in-law when I bought it. I didn't meet her until 2 years later. David laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is insane. My wife's family thinks they're doing well because her dad sold his company. But really, they're doing well because of you. Robert gets consulting fees from the restructured company, I explained. Their lifestyle is partially funded by my continued ownership. Does he know that? Not yet. But after last night, he's probably figuring it out. David sat back down, looking overwhelmed. What does Samantha want? At lunch? Probably to figure out how much money is involved and how she can access it. That's a terrible thing to say about my wife. Is it? I asked gently. David, there are some things about Samantha you need to know.